The month of February has come to a close. On the day that this video drops, there's a likely chance I'll be seeing Dune 2, which I've heard great things about. But this is time to look back at February, and I'm going to rank all 5 movies I saw in February, from the worst to the best. Hi, my name is Nathan, and I talk about a bunch of movies on this channel. If you're new here, down below in the comment section, share your ranking of the February new releases that you saw. If there's something that I missed during the month that you think I would enjoy, share that down below in the comment section. Click the like button and be subscribed. And over on my channel, I have more content like this. Check those out. Once this video is over, I did a bunch more rankings like this, and lately I've been putting out some more videos of older reviews. Check those out once this video is over. And let's just get started, but first, I want to say an honorable mention when it comes to this ranking. Not one that came out in February, but I did see it, The Kitchen. So, if you don't know what this is a Netflix dystopian sci-fi drama. And, like I said, not one that came out in the month of February, but one that did come out in January, and it came out this year, so I wanted to talk about it a little bit here. And overall, unfortunately, I just found it to be a pretty bland film. Now, I didn't go in with like high expectations or everything. I didn't even see a trailer before watching this movie. I only saw it was a sci-fi movie with Daniel Kaluuya directing. If you don't know who Daniel Kaluuya is, he's the star of Get Out. He's the star of Nope. He's in some of the Black Panther movies as a side character. And overall, it's just unfortunately pretty bland. Instead of using the dystopian sci-fi elements to create a interesting and intriguing story, it instead decides to make it a drama between a father and a son, which would work in any other context, but here it feels like the dystopian sci-fi side to the whole grand scheme of things in the film doesn't really add to anything in the film. And so you get a drama between a father and a son, but you could easily just take out the dystopian sci-fi stuff and it wouldn't change anything at all. Some characters feel unnecessary in the movie. There's this group of like bike riding people that you don't really care about. And so for me, unfortunately, it was a movie that was really boring for the most part. And it's a little bit frustrating because I was hoping Daniel Kaluuya would make something that would appeal to me a little bit more. And maybe he can make a great sci-fi movie as a director, but as his directorial debut, I didn't think this was it. But actually, in last place with this ranking is Madam Web. Now, over the past 2 weeks since this movie has come out, is there really much about this movie that hasn't really been said yet? Let's face it, this is just not a good movie. While it's not as incoherent as Morbius was, to me at least, I didn't think this was a very good movie overall. So, right off the bat, the characters and the performances are bland as can be. It looks like nobody wants to be there, like Dakota Johnson, whoever played Ben Parker. I'm sure they've done well in some of their other movies, but here, this was not their best performance, and you could just tell that on screen. Likewise, none of them are interesting enough to make you want to follow them on this journey. Nobody in this movie acts like a real human being. There is a scene where Madam Web, she leaves 3 teenagers, unsupervised in the forest after learning that some Spider-Man costumed guy, the one, the only, the almighty Ezekiel Sims, is trying to murder them. And so she leaves them unsupervised in the forest. So the first thing she does, so she can go off and learn all this other stuff about her mom and stuff. And no normal human being would ever do that. Also, the movie, the marketing of all the spider suits in it is just a big, gigantic gimmick. They literally only appear for less than 30 seconds in the entire movie, and they're all either of visions or dreams that characters are having. The plot is tied around so many contrivances and characters making stupid decisions, as I previously mentioned. Our villain, the one, the only, the almighty Ezekiel Sims, literally gets killed by product placement in the 3rd act. And for a superhero movie, I can't even consider any action sequence an action sequence in the movie, as the finale is them running into a building with explosives. They blow up all of them, and they somehow manage to dodge all of them while our villain gets killed by product placement. So all in all, why this movie isn't as bad as Morbius to me, it's not a very good movie, and to me, that makes it easily the worst movie of the year by far.
Guys, if I could sum up Madam Web with one thing, it's this.
Number 4 is Orion and the Dark. To be clear, that there's a pretty big jump here from Madam Web to Orion and the Dark, from number 5 to 4 on this list. Orion and the Dark, if you don't know what this is a DreamWorks movie that's not produced by Universal. It is produced by Netflix, and it dropped on the streaming service in early of February, so it does count as a movie that came out this month. And to me, the best way I could actually describe this movie is I felt like it was DreamWorks trying to do somewhat of a Pixar movie, but not being quite as good as a Pixar movie. It's a movie that I would give a positive review, but I never feel like it's as good as it's actually trying to be. On the positive side, you do get a likable and fun duo here with our lead character, as well as an entity that is dark, and you get this kid that's afraid of literally everything in the entire world, and his biggest fear is the dark. So once you personify dark and contrast him with the kid that he has to interact with and fix his fears, that makes for a fun little dynamic. It's also just kind of like a bunch of other Pixar movies, a fun, clever spin on things. And so, along with Dark, you get all these other entities during the night that we get to meet in the film. And so, that's just kind of a fun, clever spin on things. You know, I would say holding this movie back, and I think some of the emotion that's certainly tied to it is a little bit undermined. The satisfaction is a bit undermined because I felt like, especially in the third act, it was trying to do a bit too much, making things up as they go along. Because throughout the movie, it's a thorough line where, like, a grown-up man is telling a story to a child, and that child grows up and tells a story to her child. And it's hard to explain it in a certain way, but I didn't think that particularly worked from it. And I took away from the satisfaction of the story, as it's just a fake story. But overall, a solid enough DreamWorks adventure that families would enjoy. In third place is Argylle. Going into the year 2024, I think this was one of my most anticipated movies of the year because it was from the Matthew Vaughn and his previous spy franchise I thoroughly enjoyed. It was the Kingsman franchise, and I enjoy all 3 films in that franchise. And so, did it live up to my expectations? I wouldn't say so, but I still think that this is a fun, enjoyable movie. Matthew Vaughn's action is stylized as ever. It's very distinctly his movie. Of course, you get a star-studded, charming, and fun cast. Especially, our 2 lead characters are Sam Rockwell and Bryce Dallas Howard. They just have a great dynamic all throughout the entire thing. It moves at quite a fast pace. It never bores me. And I appreciate Matthew Vaughn trying to make a spy movie for a broader audience. You know how, like, the Kingsman movies, they're rated R, they have ultra-violence, they have language. This movie, it tones some of that down. It's not as ultra-violent because it is a PG-13 spy movie. And for parents, I think this is a good one. If your kid likes action movies, I think this is a good one to take them to. Like, the Kingsman movies might not be for them. Argylle might be their Matthew Vaughn action movie. But to me, as enjoyable as this movie ends up being, I found it very extremely flawed. It just waterboards you with twists and turns, and there's like 20 twists and turns in this entire movie, and like half of them work, half of them don't. Some of them require you to turn your brain off for your enjoyment because they sometimes involve lapses in logic all throughout the film. And like that's the main problem, is that sometimes it's clever and sometimes you can tell it's trying to be clever but not quite hitting the mark quite yet. Also, I could tell that this movie was a little bit more reliant on its CGI, and some of it isn't good. And so I enjoyed this movie, very much a Matthew Vaughn spy action movie. It wasn't, I didn't think it was as good as it maybe could have been, and so I found it one of the weaker Matthew Vaughn movies. And also, for those of you who have read the book called Argylle, I've not read it. I'm planning on doing it. I've only read like the first few pages of it. This is the actual. It's kind of fascinating because this book is written by Ellie Conway, and if you look in here, Ellie Conway is not a real person. They don't even show a picture of Ellie Conway, and so we don't know who wrote this actual book, and so that's just a fascinating fun fact that I wanted to share here before moving on to the next one. Our runner-up is Lisa Frankenstein. Full disclosure here, this is not a film that's going to be made for everybody. Just because I enjoy it doesn't mean that it's particularly made for the broadest audience. But as for me, I had an absolute blast with this movie from beginning to end. For me, somebody that likes comedies, monster movies, kind of horror movies, and certainly raunchy movies, this movie was absolutely a lot of fun. It is a comedy, it's really funny. Sometimes it has some dark humor in there, but still manages to keep that kind of lighthearted tone all throughout it, and it just goes for everything. All the humor is so over the top. The story is kind of ridiculous. It doesn't even explain really how the setup of this movie about her, our lead character, trying to resurrect, that inadvertently resurrects this zombie. It doesn't even explain how the zombie is resurrected, but it just kind of goes for it. It also just has a little bit of heart and humanity to them, as you get this bond between our zombie, who is not fluent in any language, with a high school 80s girl. And that's just kind of a fun dynamic all throughout it. It's very funny. It has a very distinct style, like the color scheme of it all, and our certain high school setting, the certain characters. It very much feels like a movie that would have come out 20 or so years ago. And it also just has heart, like I said to it. It's kind of uplifting by the end. Very dark in a way, but kind of uplifting. I will say the pacing is kind of off. It takes about 40 minutes for our zombie Frankenstein guy to actually show up in the movie. And I think our characterization of Lisa, our high school 80s girl, is very off. Like, in one scene, she is not okay with murder, and then in the next, she's actually murdering somebody and taking joy out of it, and then the next, she's not okay with murder again. So very inconsistent characterization, but a movie that nonetheless I had a blast with from beginning to end. But for me, coming in first place is Bob Marley. And over the past 2 weeks since this movie come out, this movie has seemed to be pretty polarizing. Some people are calling it solid, me included, and others seem to be going in the direction of very mediocre, very generic, and finding some very strange things in it. Understandable. If you've seen the movie, that's understandable. But as for me, I just thought this was a solid biopic. Now, if you looked at my review, I give this one a B+. So this is not a movie that's going to end up in my top 10 of the year or anything like that. Or maybe even my top 5 of the year. Like, it's not going to end up way up there. But I thought this was just a really solid biopic that gave a proper glimpse into just a portion of his life. I think to enjoy this movie, you have to accept that the movie in general has, it's kind of not based off of his whole life. It doesn't display Bob Marley becoming famous and then his, like, downfall and death. It's not that kind of biopic. It goes through the last 5 years of his life. So you have to go in there knowing that and accepting that. And I was able to buy into it, and so I enjoyed this movie. Positive side, great convincing performances. Like, the guy who plays Bob Marley, I didn't even know much about Bob Marley, but I thought the guy who plays him, he was able to transform. And I looked him up afterwards. He's the guy that plays the villain in Secret Invasion. And, like, I didn't even know that until after I see this movie, and I thought he could actually perform as a different character. Beyond that, you get, I think his wife also absolutely kills it in the performance. She is very good in this movie. And it's just kind of a wholesome, uplifting movie. Mostly through Bob Marley's point of view and beliefs, which it's set in the context of a Jamaican civil war. And he is trying to unite the two groups together through his music. And so, with that, it's just very uplifting. It's a nice message to include in the film. It's not a perfect movie. I did give it a B+, because it feels kind of like the last 5 episodes of a Bob Marley TV show biopic, rather than an actual movie, because it is telling the last 5 years of his life. But, other than that, I think if you're able to buy into that, I think this is a solid enough biopic. And so for me, this is the one that left me the most uplifted. It was probably the most cheerful of the bunch. So for me, this is my favorite of February. There you have it. That's my ranking. Down below in the comment section, share your ranking of the February new releases that you saw. If there's something that I missed this month, down below in the comment section, share that as well. Click that like button, be sure to subscribe, and check out my other videos. Thank you guys so much for sticking around to the end, and I will see you in the next one.